Well, good morning. This is Tim Hoy, the CEO of Hoy Innovations, and we're meeting here at the Warehouse Floor Conversation, a podcast that we talk about innovations of material handling and supply chain industry to fulfill material handling solutions for industry. And today we've got Mahli Guerrero as our Director of Automation, and want to turn the mic for a minute for Mahli to introduce herself and the team.
Yeah, so I'm Mahli Guerrero. I am the newly appointed Director of Automation here for Hoy. But it's been a great opportunity. We just hired our fourth engineer, so we are definitely growing. The world of automation is crazy busy, and that's what everybody's looking for right now. So
it's a super exciting time, no question. This division, a little bit of backstory on controls. I mean, our business, Hoy Engineering, we're celebrating our 60th year in business, and there's definitely been periods where we've had engineers that have done controls for us, and we've had a lot of periods where we've had and still have key partners and relationships that handle controls for conveyors and automation solutions. But we made some deliberate moves a few years ago to build a team and make controls a real core competency for our business, and the timing's just not been better for this type of move, because there's a lot of innovations coming out in industries that's available to us that we're taking advantage of to really incorporate into our offerings to customers, and I think it's going to be instrumental for differentiation and for growth in the business. Maybe talk a little bit about, I love that you've come out of college and in a more recent time period to learn about maybe some of the innovations in industrial controls and what was tradition for a long time. And tradition is, we love tradition, and we also like to maybe disrupt tradition. But what has kind of been the controls basis in the past?
yeah, so I think one of the things that's helped my career is that I wasn't traditionally in controls in college. Coming out of college, that was kind of the first job, actually with one of your integration partners, and really learning about the controls world, bringing kind of the latest ideas from the college world and saying, the controls world is great, but there's a lot of room for growth here. And so how do we make that happen in a way that's beneficial for our customers, beneficial for the engineers working in there? And so really being able to see kind of the traditional controls world coming out of school, and then taking what I learned in school and being able to apply those principles now has been just lots of fun. So, and I think has really helped our customers benefit well from the dynamicness and the availability of the technologies that are out there, being able to take advantage of those. Yeah. So.
Well, it seems like you've helped us become, an early adopter of some technologies. And I think one of the things that as we started to investigate some of these new technologies that look to be really appropriate for supply chain and conveyor controls. We'll talk a little bit about the back-off systems and the technologies. The tradition of PLC programming versus PC-based is going to be some of the topic of our conversation today. And I'd say in the last 10, 15 years, we would see conveyor systems come to design. We would price them up in a hardware scenario, then we'd work on the controls, making the conveyors do what they needed to do for industry. And we just saw over the year after year, the escalation of cost of controls becoming, equal to the hardware cost and sometimes surpassing the hardware cost. And that started to become a conversation with our customers saying, man, this is way more than we thought we were going to have to budget. We thought about the conveyor system and then realized the controls to make it do what we need it to do are, again, just as much as the hardware. And it started to become a pushback item. And I think for a while in the offering with hydro conveyors and the teaming up that we have, we thought if this continues to be a hurdle, it's going to hurt our ability to sell and have the market share for hydro conveyor companies. So coming up with solutions that were going to be more scalable and a little bit better to come to market at a price point, we felt like Beckoff maybe something we should investigate really a lot deeper. And you were really, I think, an early adopter of that technology platform.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. So one of the benefits of Beckoff is it incorporates a lot of the more of the programming world rather than the controls world. So it's a programming based platform rather than a typically controls based platform, which really is powerful in the ability to come up with a base that can be reusable. The controls platform, because they were developed for machines specifically. And then as the world evolved into more system-based, processes, that was not as conducive to that or amenable to that. They had to kind of catch up to that point. Whereas Beckoff really came in at a time where they could start that way. And so they've been able to evolve where we're now in this really technology heavy world, programming heavy world, that they can support all of that. So they've built it from the ground up, and because Microsoft existed, they were able to kind of start with a Microsoft platform. And that's familiar to everyone. I mean, that's a household name. So being able to start with that base, now you've got all the Microsoft tools as well as the PLC based tools to control your equipment. So now you can actually a little bit more easily and a little with more adaptability, you can now go into this IoT world and this cloud world that we're now seeing, where people are moving their systems to, Amazon servers or, remote access rather than these local on-site systems that we've been so accustomed to before. So that adaptability really helps companies stay up with the latest and greatest technology.
Great. One of the things that we saw in the early advantages was really the cost model, and that we could have a library of automation tools. It seemed like in the past, in the PLC world, we would have familiar projects, but they really needed to be built up custom again for this logic controller to be engineered and working in that local environment. So it was kind of a lot of re-engineering of systems from ground up, which drove the cost up. So the idea of libraries and having scripts that we can reuse and programs for merging and sorts and flow control all started to make a lot of sense for the sales side of the business. That was a huge advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. In the material handling world, you're basically, it doesn't matter if you're moving shoes or you're moving, cases of soda or whatever. It's moving packages from A to B. And so that's really something that doesn't change. There's parts that do change, but that base layer really it's the same kind of process. And so being able to recognize that and to develop a system that allows some customization for what the specific application is, but then also having that base layer that is dependable because you've deployed it at multiple sites is really an advantage. It saves on development time, really that timeline, and then there is an overall cost savings there. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the stability and what about remote access in or updates or supporting that customer from a remote location? That's obviously been...
Yes, that's also a huge advantage. We've had customers that, traditionally with PLCs that don't have that internet accessibility, if they had a down where, their maintenance crew on site couldn't handle it and they needed to reach out for that, a little bit more expert support, that would require someone to go out on site to look at that and to help them find out what the problem is. But now with that internet accessibility, we're on the phone with them. We can quickly see, in the code what's going on, and they're the boots on the ground for us to tell us what's going on. But then we can figure it out here, and that just saves everyone time and money in being able to quickly figure that out because you're cutting out that travel.
Yeah, no, that's great. What seems like in the past, from a security and access point, in the past on the traditional systems, we might want to have a line into a PLC but some companies didn't really want to have that vulnerability. So in the PC program world, does that offer a lot better security than what we used to deal with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So security is a huge deal, and it's only getting more and more of a concern for companies. They want their, they want their system safe. And so the fact that we have a PC-based system, the security layer lies within that kind of, OS layer, so the Microsoft layer. And that's something that all IT groups are familiar with. And so they can deploy their security protocols that they have on their site to make sure that that system is safe. Traditional PLCs, you have to kind of have an interim, you have to take it to like the network or server level to provide that protection. But then if they were to bypass those protections, there's nothing really kind of at that base layer. Now they are working on that and kind of developing that because they're realizing that everyone is moving to, this kind of cloud-based access. But again, when you start with that base layer versus having to go back and re-engineer, that's just a really nice kind of peace of mind that you get. And the fact that they can put whatever they feel is safe really kind of, minimizes the risk and makes everyone sleep better at night. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Exciting times for that, for the benefit. It just continues to offer layers of benefit to our customers. Lower cost and better reliability and better security all add up to be really great changes. One of the other exciting areas, obviously, robotic arms. We're using arms and robots for palletizing and for other tasks and material handling. But and again, applications seem to be endless for worker support, palletizing things that have been difficult for heavy lifting and back injuries and everything else. Robots are doing a great job of that. The other area that we're really excited about that, I'd say maybe 2 years ago with your discoveries at ProMat and at Modex, interviewing robotics, mobile robots, AMRs and AGVs and that type of technology has been a fun journey. And we're in some exciting places right now with some technologies that we're bringing to market and having real success with. Talk about kind of your discovery in this last year and interviewing and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, so that was definitely a very exciting task to be, given the mantle for, I guess, to find that company that's going to fit well with our business model. And there is definitely a lot out there. I remember going to, these shows a few years ago, and there wasn't a lot. And then going just, a year or two ago, and now, it's like the whole show is what they're focusing on. And really the technology has evolved to such a level that, it's kind of, when technologies first come out, it's like this, when we had record players and there's this huge thing that took up, areas in our living room, and now we're listening to them on the phones in our pocket. So, and that's kind of where these AMRs are at now, is they're so dynamic and they're so diverse in the application, and really the price point has also come down to affordability for even small and medium companies, can find certain applications that really make sense for their businesses. And so really kind of taking in who's all out there and what's available on the market and finding one that was going to be, because we are a small team, we don't have those engineering resources to devote to that. So we needed something that was going to be easy to develop, but also very robust so that we could come up with those custom applications for our customers.
So it's, looking back in the industry, again, AGVs have been available long before I started in the business, you know what I mean? And, but it's interesting, I remember talking to, it was really always the biggest companies in industry, like the Fortune 100 type level companies that were looking at material handling solutions like this is a repeated pathway and everything else. Should we look at AGVs to do that? Time and time again, we'd look at it, scope it. It was a difficult thing to put the pricing together, understand the engineering scope that would go into delivering this system. And back in the day, it could have been a tagline system that they'd have to saw cut, like a groove in the floor, or a wire guided system, or a magnetic tape. There was a lot of innovations, but they still had a lot of clunkiness to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I think probably maybe because of the goal for driverless cars and vision scoping, all that has leveraged so many other industries. And, it seems like the last 5 years has been a real push, and the advancements in the AMR technology, as opposed to AGV, automated guided vehicles, to automated mobile robots,
Mm-hmm.
it's night and day. The accessibility to small and medium business is absolutely accurate, and the deployment is, when we talk about 5 times easier, 10 times easier, that's not an overstatement of how much better it is.
For sure. Exactly. Yeah. So, and we don't discount the technology that existed before, right? I mean, it definitely served a purpose for the companies that could afford it. And that technology and that research allowed us to now it's affordable for everyone. And the deployability, we were out last month and we got to do an on-site demo for a customer, and we went out the day before, set up where we were going to do the demo and showed it off the next day. And I don't know that you could have done that, 5 or 10 years ago.
No, you could not have. No, not without just massive engineering behind the scenes to create the pathways.
Yeah.
It was interesting because, we were at that demo, and the client had a pretty big group of team members, from executive team members to all the way into operations, and people that might be using, or even some of the material handlers that is today doing those moves. You know? And at the end of the demo, the executive member just said, the fact that you came yesterday, scanned our areas, and had not a short path, this is a long path, and demoed it to that team the next day. He was blown away. He said, there's absolutely so many applications that these will help solve.
Absolutely.
So unbelievably exciting.
And I think the cool thing about being able to take it out to a site like that is, there's always that fear of robots are taking our jobs, but really what we're trying to do is augment that work, right? So your workers can stay in those value added areas, but there's no value add when you're taking a cart from one end of the building to another that takes, 10 or 15 minutes for that worker to do that. So let's have those robots that do it, to do those tasks, so that those workers can stay in those areas and provide that value added service that, that the workers do. And that's also the cool thing, is that the workers can see it and they go, oh yeah, because I hate doing that walk, and I try to avoid it, but they see that those robots are going to take that over. They can go, okay, now I can stay and I can continue to feel productive and efficient. Well, this thing is doing, what I don't want to do. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I think definitely, maybe down the road, I'm sure robots will be able to do more than they do today. But I think that's a long ways off, and it's not going to be at an affordable rate. People still are doing the valuable work they do and making, decisions into looking into the bin, making the picks that are appropriate, confirming those picks.
Absolutely.
There are probably robots that can do some of that, but repeatable with the diversity that comes at business every day and the changes, I think that's a fair ways out.
Absolutely.
But the idea of having supportive to the workforce for that mundane, it really is going to enhance the workers that are there to be probably more fulfilled and focus on what they do well.
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to think some of the other, we have a little demo center in Salt Lake City near the airport that allowed us to take a manufacturing company in to have a really odd cart. It was a really, it was an odd sized cart that really, for their corporate group to get feeling good about it, saying, well, can a robot really handle this odd shaped, material handling cart?
Absolutely.
And again, not, I don't want to diminish, it was a lot of work for you to go set that up and do it, but it was work that could be done even as a, final test or validation of a proposal that allowed a customer to come in, see it work, actually worked even better than they they were accepting a level of some movement and some shaking, and they're like, wow, this is even more stable than we thought it would be. It came off even much better. They're like, this is really what we needed to approve the project and to move forward. So
Well, and that's actually one of the reasons I really love working here at Hoy is you guys are willing to make those investments for, innovations that you can see really benefiting, the workforce and the companies here. So because we have those demo robots, we can do this kind of R&D before companies, spend that money and place that PO so that they're confident that what they're buying is going to work at the end of the day. And, that really just eliminates the risk from their point of view. And and as an engineer, I love that as well, because I can go in with confidence saying, yeah, we're going to make this work the way we say we will. So,
well, I think that's, it definitely goes down to the roots of the business when hearing my father talk about efficiencies that you can discover tomorrow to implement on the floor are efficiencies that pay back every day after that. Every day after that you don't have to do that and some automation replaces it, it's a savings. So,
love that.
There's an immediate ROI, but that ROI doesn't stop paying back. Once the investment's there, it continues to contribute to the profitability of the business.
Right.
And, I think in the end, that's really one of the key things that we're trying to supply for industry is ways to do it better with less cost and to really ultimately lower their overhead so they can be profitable and support the wage growth of their staff and the success of their company and the reinvestment into their business. That's
for sure.
I think, the cycle of business life, that's really what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Some those investments are fun investments to make in the business because you see the benefit to customers. And we've been working on a project to expand our office here for the controls team, and then also have a R&D for smaller robotics and some of our warehouse OS picking and integration into this. So we'll have a little bit of a technology center with office space that will be fun, and I'm sure we'll show that in a future podcast with some of the video of that area. But we're going to be excited about that test case area. And really to kind of demonstrate, again, I think as the world is evolving to go to cloud-based and, their shopping carts in the cloud, their inventory is now in the cloud we host, and the automation we have with cloud automation and APIs. It's just exciting now to link that to machine control and AMRs and storage machines that offer this connected experience in a way that in the past would have been very expensive and very difficult because it would have been a custom-built system.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And even a year ago, I mean, how long have I been here now? 2.5 years. And we really didn't have a lot of those questions. But in the past year, I think all of our customers now are asking, can you do cloud-based interfaces? And, and we love that we can happily say, yes, we can do those things. So, yeah.
Well, it's fun to think, and we've, Mahli's one of these innovative team members that are real key stakeholders in the business, and we're fortunate to have a few. And these movements toward the cloud are things that we really started to see 7-8 years ago. You know what I mean? And now with the advent of the controls group, and you're just right in sync with that vision. But it's so exciting to see industry falling right in where we think there's so many advantages, and we're excited to bring it to market.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it was a weird happenstance to happen onto material handling, but it's something I'm very passionate about. So it's fun to bring this vision to life and provide these solutions to our customers.
We couldn't be more excited about the future, and the leadership you bring to the group and the things you're championing are going to be fantastic for the workers on the warehouse floor and for our customers. And we're just excited about the future. And thank you for your great contribution.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.